What happens when a prince meets his match in the most unexpected place? When Prince Harry walked onto the set of The View, he thought he was in for another routine interview about his charity work. What he got instead was a verbal sparring match that would leave viewers stunned and the royal family scrambling for damage control. Before we dive into this explosive encounter, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below with your thoughts on royal interviews gone wrong. The atmosphere in the studio felt different from the moment Prince Harry settled into his chair at the iconic curved table. The usual pre-interview banter between the hosts seemed more subdued than normal, and there was an underlying tension that even the studio audience could sense. Harry, dressed in his typical casual blazer and open-necked shirt, smiled politely. As the cameras rolled and the show's familiar theme music faded out, Whoopi Goldberg, as the moderator, began with what seemed like a standard opening. We're here with Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex, who's with us today to talk about his latest charitable initiative supporting wounded veterans. Harry, thank you for joining us. Thank you for having me, Harry replied, his British accent cutting through the New York studio atmosphere. I'm always happy to discuss the work we're doing with veterans and their families. But Joy Behar, never one to follow a script when controversy beckoned, jumped in before Whoopi could continue. So, Harry, she began, her voice carrying that distinct New York edge that had made her both famous and infamous. Let's talk about your latest philanthropic venture. But first, I have to ask, and I hope you don't mind me being direct here. Don't. You think it's a bit rich, pardon the pun, for someone who's lived off taxpayer money their entire life to be lecturing others about giving back to society? The question hung in the air like a live grenade. Harry's practiced media smile faltered for just a moment, a flicker of surprise crossing his features before his royal training kicked in. Well, Joy, I think that's rather unfair, if I'm being honest. My military service, my work with veterans, my charitable endeavors, these aren't exactly what I'd call living off taxpayers without giving anything back. Oh, please, Joy shot back, leaning forward in her chair with the predatory instinct of a seasoned talk show host who smelled blood in the water. You served, yes, and I respect that. But let's be realistic here. You went to Afghanistan with more security than most world leaders. You had bodyguards costing British taxpayers millions while you were there. That's not exactly roughing it with the common soldiers, is it? The other hosts exchanged glances, clearly sensing that the interview was already veering into dangerous territory. This wasn't the promotional puff piece they had been expecting. Sarah N. shifted uncomfortably in her seat, while Alyssa Farah Griffin looked like she was preparing to jump in at any moment. Whoopi Goldberg, with her years of experience navigating tricky television moments, attempted to steer the conversation back on track. Joy, maybe we should focus on the charity work he's here to discuss today. Harry, tell us about your latest initiative. But Joy was just getting started, her journalistic instincts overriding any consideration for diplomatic niceties. No, I think this is important. Whoopi, this goes to the heart of credibility. Harry, you've made a career out of criticizing the very institution that gave you everything you have. The palaces, the education, the platform you're using, right? Now, to promote your causes, the titles, the wealth, the opportunities that your birth afforded you. Isn't that just a bit hypocritical? Harry's jaw visibly tightened, and for the first time, viewers could see the careful composure that had been drilled into him from childhood beginning to crack. I've been very clear about my criticisms of the institution. Joy, they're about transparency, they're about accountability, and they're about the need for modernization in a changing world. These aren't personal attacks on the monarchy itself. They're about making it more relevant and responsive to the people it serves. Really? Joy's eyebrows shot up in theatrical disbelief. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're making millions upon millions of dollars by airing your family's dirty laundry in public. Netflix deals, book contracts, speaking engagements. Tell me, how much did Netflix pay you again? Was it 80 million? 100 million? Because that seems like a pretty good living for someone who claims to want privacy. The studio audience, usually quick to react with applause or gasps, had gone completely silent. Even the usually animated crowd seemed to sense they were witnessing something unprecedented, something that was spiraling beyond the bounds of normal daytime television discourse. Sarah N., clearly uncomfortable with the direction the interview was taking, tried to inject some diplomacy into the conversation. Perhaps we could discuss the mental health initiatives that Harry has been championing. That's work that transcends politics and really helps people. Mental health, Joy repeated, her voice now dripping with a skepticism that was almost palpable. Yes, let's talk about that. Harry, you've spoken very extensively and very publicly about your own struggles with mental health, and I want to say that I commend you for that. Mental health awareness is crucial. But here's what I don't understand, and maybe you can help me with this. Don't you think that constantly relitigating your mother's death in public, bringing it up in every interview, every documentary, every book, might not be the healthiest approach, not just for you, but for your children who will grow up reading? All of this, the question hit the studio like a thunderbolt. You could almost hear the collective intake of breath from the audience. Harry's face went pale, then flushed red, the color change visible even through the studio makeup. His hands, which had been resting casually on the table, now gripped the edge slightly. "I beg your pardon." Harry's voice was quiet, controlled, but there was steel underneath it. "You heard me," Joy continued, seemingly oblivious to, or perhaps energized by, the dangerous waters she was entering. "Every single interview you do, every documentary you participate in, every book you write or cooperate with, it always comes back to Diana. Always. Your mother's death, the media's role in it, how it affected you, how the family handled it. Don't you think, after all these years, it might be time to move on? For your own sake, if not for your family's sake." The temperature in the studio seemed to drop 10 degrees. The other hosts were now looking genuinely alarmed. Sunny Hostin was shaking her head slightly, while Alyssa Farah Griffin looked like she wanted to disappear under the table. Harry's voice was barely controlled when he finally responded. "My mother was killed by the same media circus that you're part of right now. Joy, the same relentless pursuit, the same invasion of privacy, the same lack of basic human decency. And you're suggesting that I should just forget about it, that I should just move on and pretend it never happened." "I'm not suggesting you forget about it," Joy replied, her voice taking on a tone that was somehow both condescending and coolly professional. "I'm suggesting that maybe, just maybe, profiting from that tragedy, turning it into a business model, isn't the noble cause you make it out to be." Alyssa Farah Griffin, sensing the conversation was about to explode completely, attempted damage control with the desperation of someone trying to put out a forest fire with a garden hose. "I think what Joy is trying to say is that we all admire your advocacy work, Harry, but perhaps we could focus on the positive impact you're making today, rather than relitigating past grievances." But Harry was no longer interested in diplomatic solutions. He turned to face Joy directly, his royal training now completely at war with his obvious anger. "You know what, Joy? I came here today thinking I'd have a civilized conversation about helping wounded veterans, about supporting families who've sacrificed everything for their countries. Instead, I find myself being attacked by someone who's never served a day in their life, never lost a parent to media harassment, never had to live under the microscope that you and your colleagues create every single day." "Oh, here we go," Joy laughed. But there was no humor in it, only a bitter edge that cut through the studio air. The poor little prince routine, poor little rich boy who had everything handed to him on a silver platter. "Harry, you chose this life. You chose to leave the royal family. You chose to move to America. You chose to do tell-all interviews. You chose to write books about your private family matters. You can't have it both ways. You can't court publicity when it suits you, and then complain about media attention when it doesn't." "I chose to leave because of people like you," Harry shot back, his voice rising for the first time since the interview. "Began. People who think they know everything about my life, my family, my motivations, based on nothing more than tabloid headlines and gossip. People who make judgments about situations they know nothing about, who profit from other people's pain and call it journalism." The other hosts were now looking genuinely concerned. Whoopi was making subtle hand gestures toward the producers, clearly hoping someone would step in to defuse the situation. But the train wreck was too compelling, too raw, too real for anyone to want to stop it. "Maybe we should take a commercial break," Whoopi suggested, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had navigated countless television crises. "No," Joy said firmly, her eyes never leaving Harry's face. "This is important. This is exactly the kind of conversation we should be having. Harry, you want to talk about the media? Fine, let's talk about it. But you can't sit there and pretend you're not part of it. You're not just commenting on the royal family anymore, You're commodifying your own trauma. You're packaging your personal pain and selling it to the highest bidder. And frankly, it's getting old. Harry stood up slightly in his chair, his composure finally beginning to crack in earnest. How dare you? How dare you sit there in your comfortable studio, surrounded by your security and your producers and your carefully crafted image, and judge me? You want to talk about commodifying trauma? What do you think you do every single day on this show? You pick apart people's lives for entertainment. You dissect their relationships, their failures, their personal struggles, and you serve it up to your audience like it's some kind of meal. That's my job, Joy replied without missing a beat, her voice steady and unrepentant. I'm a journalist. I ask tough questions. I hold people accountable. And apparently, based on all those Netflix deals and book contracts, it's your job to now. The studio audience gasped audibly. Even the camera operators, who had seen countless heated exchanges over the years, seemed stunned by the brutal directness of the comment. Harry's face was now fully flushed, the careful media training of decades seemingly evaporating in real time. You know what, Joy? Harry's voice was ice cold now, his royal upbringing completely abandoned. You want to talk about my job? Let's talk about yours. You sit here every single day, hiding behind this desk, taking cheap shots at people who are actually out there trying to make a difference in the world. When was the last time you did something that actually mattered? When was the last time you put yourself on the line for something bigger than your own ego? Joy's eyes flashed dangerously, like a predator that had just been challenged by potential prey. Excuse me, I've been fighting for women's rights, for LGBTQ rights, for social justice, for progressive causes longer than you've been alive, Prince. I've been taking on powerful people and holding them accountable when you were still playing dress-up in your little military uniforms, fighting. Harry laughed, but there was no humor in it, only bitterness and growing rage. Call this fighting. You call sitting in a comfortable studio in Manhattan, surrounded by bodyguards and producers and assistants, fighting? I've been in actual combat zones, Joy. I've seen real fighting. I've seen what it looks like when people actually put their lives on the line for something they believe in. Oh, please! Joy waved her hand dismissively, as if swatting away an annoying insect. Don't pull the military card with me. Yes, you served, and I respect that. But let's be honest about what your military service actually looked like. You went to Afghanistan with more security than most world leaders. You had an entire team of people whose only job was to keep you safe. That's not exactly roughing it with the common soldiers, is it? Sunny Hostin, who had been notably quiet throughout the exchange, finally found her voice. Maybe we should redirect this conversation toward something more constructive. Harry, you've done incredible work with the Invictus Games. No, Sunny, Harry said, his attention still locked on Joy like a laser beam. I think Joy has something she wants to get off her chest. She's clearly been saving this up for a while. So let's hear it. What's your real problem with me, Joy? What's really eating at you? Joy leaned back in her chair, a sardonic smile playing at her lips, like someone who had just been dealt a winning hand in a high-stakes poker game. Problem? You really want to know? My real problem is that you're a hypocrite, Harry, a walking, talking contradiction. You complain about privacy while doing interviews every other week. You talk about protecting your family while throwing your own father and brother under the bus in every public forum available. You claim to want a normal life while living in a $16 million mansion in one of the most exclusive areas of California. At least I earned that mansion, Harry shot back, his voice rising again. I didn't inherit it from my parents, or marry into it. I worked for it, earned it. Joy's voice pitched higher, taking on an almost incredulous tone. You earned it by selling out your family's secrets, by betraying confidences, by taking private conversations and private moments, and turning them into public entertainment. That's not earning, Harry. That's betrayal. The other hosts were now visibly uncomfortable, shifting in their seats like students watching two teachers have a screaming match in front of the class. Whoopi tried once more to regain control of her show. All right, let's just take a step back. Here, we're all adults. We can have a civilized conversation about these issues. No, Whoopi, Harry said, his voice deadly calm in a way that was somehow more unsettling than his previous anger. Let Joy finish. She's clearly been saving this up for a while. She's obviously got more to say. Joy didn't need the invitation. She leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with the kind of intensity that had made her both famous and feared in equal measure. "You want me to finish? Fine, let's finish this. You talk about your mother constantly, Harry. Every interview, every appearance, every piece of content you create. But here's what I want to know. What would Diana actually think about what you're doing now? Do you honestly think she'd be proud of you dragging the royal family through the mud for money? Do you think she'd approve of you turning your family's private pain into a public spectacle?" The studio went completely silent. Even the crew members, who had been quietly moving around the set, stopped what they were doing. The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud, and Harry's face had gone completely white. "Don't," he said, quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Don't you dare bring my mother into this." "Why not?" Joy pressed on, clearly sensing she had hit the most sensitive nerve possible. "She's the justification you give for everything you do. She's your shield, your excuse, your reason for every decision you make. But here's the thing, Harry, and I think deep down you know this. Diana was beloved because she was classy, she was dignified, she was graceful under pressure. She didn't air her dirty laundry in public. She didn't turn family disputes into entertainment. So what you're doing now, this public campaign against your own family, that's not honoring her memory, Harry. That's exploiting it." Harry was on his feet now, his chair scraping back so loudly that it echoed through the studio like a gunshot. "You have no idea what you're talking about. No idea what my mother went through, what she wanted, what she believed in, what she stood for. I know she wouldn't want her son acting like a spoiled brat on American television." Joy snapped back, her voice cutting through the studio like a blade. "That's enough," Alyssa said firmly, but both Harry and Joy were now completely beyond the reach of their co-host's attempts at mediation. Spoiled brat. Harry's voice was shaking with rage now, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "You want to see spoiled? Let me tell you about spoiled. Spoiled is sitting in your ivory tower, in your comfortable studio, passing judgment on people whose lives you know absolutely nothing about. Spoiled is profiting from other people's pain while pretending to be some kind of moral authority." "I'm not psychoanalyzing anything," Joy retorted, her voice now matching his in intensity. "I'm pointing out facts. Cold, hard facts. You've made a career out of being a victim, Harry. You've turned victimhood into a brand." Harry was practically yelling now, his voice echoing off the studio walls. "I've taken more responsibility than you ever have in your entire life. I've served my country in combat. What have you done besides sit here and complain? What have you actually built? What have you actually accomplished besides tearing other people down?" "I've held people accountable," Joy fired back, her voice rising to match his. "I've exposed hypocrisy. I've challenged power, including entitled princes who think they can waltz into America and lecture us about privilege, while living in luxury most people can't even imagine." Entitled. Harry's laugh was harsh and bitter. "You want to talk about entitled? You've been on this show for decades, making millions of dollars by gossiping about other people's lives. You've never had to earn anything. You've never had to prove yourself. You've never had to face real consequences for anything you've said or done. You just sit here in your protected bubble and tear people down for sport." The audience was completely transfixed now, watching what had become less an interview than a gladiatorial combat between two people who clearly despised each other. Sarah N. made one final desperate attempt at mediation. "Maybe we should all just take a step back and remember that we're all human beings here. We all have feelings. We all make mistakes." "Some of us are human beings," Harry said, his eyes never leaving Joy's face. "Others are just predators in human clothing, feeding off other people's misery and calling it journalism." Joy stood up abruptly, her chair scraping back with a sound like fingernails on a chalkboard. "You know what? I've had enough of this entitled little prince act. I've had enough of your victim complex, your self-pity, your holier-than-thou attitude. You want to insult me? Fine. But you're doing it on my show, at my table, in my country. And I don't have to sit here and take it from someone who's never worked a real day in his life." "Your show?" Harry laughed bitterly. "This isn't your show, Joy. This is a circus, and you're the head clown. You're the main attraction in a freak show that masquerades as journalism." "That's it," Joy said, her voice shaking with rage. "I'm done. I'm absolutely done with this spoiled brat and his temper tantrum. Security, security, get him out of here. Get this entitled, ungrateful, spoiled little prince out of my studio right now. The audience erupted in shocked gasps and murmurs. Even Harry looked genuinely surprised that she had actually called security on him. Are you serious right now? He asked, his voice incredulous. Dead serious, Joy replied, her face flushed with anger. You want to act like a child? You want to throw tantrums? Then you can leave like a child. Security. 2 security guards appeared at the edge of the set, clearly uncomfortable with the unprecedented situation they were being asked to handle. Whoopi tried one last time to salvage something from the wreckage. Joy, maybe we should discuss this during the commercial break. Maybe we can work this out. Get him out of here. Harry looked around at the other hosts, seeing a mixture of shock, embarrassment, and pity on their faces. He straightened his jacket with as much dignity as he could muster under the circumstances. You know what, Joy, you're actually doing me a favor. I'd rather be kicked off this pathetic excuse for a television show than spend another minute breathing the same air as you. Good, Joy, replied coldly. Don't let the door hit you on the way out, Your Highness. Harry began walking toward the exit, the security guards flanking him but clearly reluctant to actually touch a member of the royal family. As he reached the edge of the set, he turned back one final time, his face a mask of cold fury. You know what the real tragedy is? Joy. My mother actually admired strong women. She would have been absolutely disgusted by what you've become. She would have seen right through your act to the bitter, jealous, small-minded person you really are. And with that final devastating blow, Prince Harry walked off the set of The View, leaving behind a stunned studio audience and a television moment that would be replayed and analyzed for years to come. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every moment of what was already being called the most explosive interview in daytime television history. When 2 strong-willed people refuse to back down from a fight, that's the incredible story of how Prince Harry got kicked off The View after his brutal clash with Joy Behar. What do you think? Was Joy right to call security? Or did she cross a line that should never have been crossed? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more unbelievable stories like this one.